Hey everyone, let's try this second video on poker concepts that apply to Through the Ages. In my last video I discussed hand reading and how paying attention to the way your opponents play their turns could potentially tip you off into what events they seeded into the event deck. In this video I'm going to discuss a concept called the semi-bluff. The semi-bluff. Bluffing is, of course, an important part of poker, and it's probably the most romanticized aspect of the game. If you hear that someone is good at poker, probably one of the first things that pops into your mind is that they're a good bluffer. And in reality, that can be true, but it's just one aspect of the game, and perhaps a more useful tactic for a good player to have in their arsenal is the semi-bluff. So what is a semi-bluff? It is a bet that you make when you have a hand that is very likely not the best hand right now, but it has a good chance to improve as the hand develops and improve into the best hand. Most of the time this means betting when you have a straight draw or a flush draw with more cards to come early on in the betting rounds. And it's usually a superior move to just bluffing with a complete trash hand, because you're combining two sources of equity. You can make the best hand fold and win the pot right there, or your draw might come in and improve to the best hand and you win the pot organically. Now, I know not everyone plays poker, so just in case you're having trouble keeping up, it's not a complicated example, but just in case, I'll say that a good way to think about it is in terms of percentages. If you have a hand that has a 30% chance to win by bluffing, those aren't the best odds. You're probably not going to make that play too often. But if you add on to that the fact that you 30% of the hand or 30% of the time will improve by hitting your draw and just win the hand outright that way, suddenly that makes bluffing a little bit more of a profitable move. You have the 30% equity, which we called fold equity, of winning by getting the opponent to fold a better hand, and the 30% equity that you get from the times where your hand improves. So if you add them together, you can't really do that. You can't actually just say like, oh, that's 60% equity I have in the hand, but it's close. You know, it's probably above 50% at that point, which would make it a profitable move. I'm sure you can't wait to see how this applies to Through the Ages. Well, bluffing is a part of Through the Ages. Compared to poker, it's a very tiny part of the game, but in any game with concealed information, bluffing can be a good move if the benefits of the misdirection that you're causing outweigh the opportunity cost. And Through the Ages, that opportunity cost is usually going to be decreased efficiency, making a move that otherwise wouldn't make sense for your game plan. But yeah, a lot of times that's going to be too high of a price to pay. You, for example, wouldn't want to, build toward an age 3 impact that you know isn't in the deck just for the sake of throwing your opponents off, because it's going to affect your score. The lower score that you have is usually not going to be worth throwing your opponents off in that case. But there are some times when a semi-bluff type play could make sense, and I'll give one example here. This is a 4-player game from this year's World Championship. It's Danio's second turn in age 3. And he kills Bach. That's not very nice. He researches cavalrymen, increases population, plays patriotism, builds a cavalryman, and takes movies. So what's so remarkable about this turn? To me, it is researching and building the cavalryman. It's not a unit that works with his current tactic, right? He's currently on fortifications. So a more efficient play would just be build a cannon. Uh, he's not going to reveal the mechanized army this turn, so I guess you'd say he's kind of building units inefficiently, strictly speaking. But there's a number of reasons which make this a good play. Number one, and this is probably the primary reason I would guess, is that it makes him the strongest with Napoleon's bonus. The cannon wouldn't do that, so he's going to be very prepared for the event deck. Number two, actually I would say number one might be the only reason he's doing this. We don't know for sure. But number two is it leaves us guessing as to whether he has the mechanized army or not. He could just be holding it back for that extra card draw. He could be holding it back for deceptive purposes. Or he may not have it in his hand at all. I don't think there's a real good reason to play it. Maybe he'd want to play it if he had it just to make it more likely that he can get another aggression off against Snuka next turn. But if he's not going to play an aggression next turn, there's no need to play it if he has it. So we can't say for sure that he doesn't have it. And number three, this is where the semi-bluff aspect comes in. Even if he doesn't have the mechanized army in his hand, he could still draw it later in the game. There are 2 copies of this tactic, so it's not a long shot at all that he could draw it. And even if he never does draw it, you kind of have to play the rest of the game respecting the fact that he could have it. So this move implies a lot of strength that he may not actually have. But nonetheless, you have to play cautiously knowing that he could be able to rapidly increase his strength on any given turn, especially if he has 15 resources lying around. He can get into that age 2 tactic twice and have a lot of strength. So unless, of course, you've drawn both copies of the mechanized army yourself, then you can call his bluff. But unless that's happened, which would be somewhat of a rare occurrence this early in the age, you have to play like he possibly has that tactic in hand. This implied strength of possibly having a tactic in your hand that you haven't played yet, it's especially useful on defense. When you're being aggressive in Through the Ages, in terms of wars and aggressions, your strength has to be fully realized. You have to have the highest number possible next to your leader icon here. You can't really hold anything back. But on defense, especially for the purposes of defending a war, a lot of times it's the potential strength that matters, because a high enough potential strength could be enough to deter a war. And looking at the board, one option that Danio may have next turn, now that he has movies, is to go for Chaplain and build a movie and kind of transition into a high culture production strategy. He'll lose a lot of strength from Napoleon, but he may be able to afford to do that, especially if he can threaten to get into a mechanized army at any point. Opponents will have to think twice before pursuing a strategy where they're going to declare war on him. Now, this is kind of always true with fortifications. You always have to worry about a high potential strength when someone has fortifications, because there are 4 age 3 tactics that are cannon heavy. As part of what makes fortification such a good tactic, in my opinion, is those smooth age 3 transitions. So it's something that, regardless, you'd have to think about. But when the unit is already built, like Danio built it here, it's just a little more real, I guess. It's just a little more, in your face. It's easier to. It shows you like it's easier for him to build 3 units and just get into a strong age 3 tactic twice. And one more thing to note, it's a very small thing, but the small things add up, is that he has 1 age 2 card here. It's possible that he is doing this with a mobile artillery in his hand as a backup tactic, which would mean that this is not really that inefficient of a play in terms of strength, right? It'd still be a small waste of science, but he still has he's not sacrificing anything strength-wise. If he has a mobile artillery in his hand, he could just, in that point, free roll on the opportunity to draw a mechanized army. Now, in all likelihood, this is just an H2 defense card in his hand. That's probably the most likely explanation, but I'm just noting it's a small possibility that he has the mobile artillery in hand, kind of like you would have maybe a backup tact or backup colony in hand if you're going to go for the Suez Canal. You might hold on to just say like an age 1 historic territory if you were going to go for the Suez Canal, with the idea that hopefully that you're going to draw an age 2 colony to go with it, but you have this backup tactic or this backup colony in the case of this example, in case you never do draw that colony. All right, what else can I say here? I guess that's it. Just to recap, this is a semi-bluff situation for Danio because he may have the tactic that he's representing in his hand, or he may draw it later. What makes this a good play is the combination of those factors. Right, the combination of becoming the strongest immediately with Napoleon, possibly winning some strength events over me and Donut, implying or threatening more potential strength than he actually has on the board, and the ability to draw the tactic later if he actually doesn't have it now. And maybe he actually does have it. I imagine that sometimes he has it here and sometimes he doesn't, which is just like poker, where sometimes you'll be balanced. It's what we call in poker being balanced. Sometimes you'll have the hand that you're representing with the bet, and sometimes you won't. In this case, if I had to guess, I would guess he doesn't have it just for the pure fact that he only drew 3 cards prior to this. But he may have it. We don't know. So, all things considered, a nice play by Danio. I really like the move. And spoiler alert, he does actually go for that Chaplin and movies play next turn, produces a lot of end game culture, and goes on to win the game. All right, I think that's it. Thanks, everyone. If you can think of another semi-bluff situation that applies to Through the Ages, let me know in the comments, please. I would be interested to hear your thoughts, or any other board game, really. Any of your favorite board games. I know some board games. I know the community knows a lot of board games and probably plays them very well. So yeah, any board game where a poker concept or Through the Ages concept applies to that board game, I'd be interested to hear about it. Thanks a lot. I hope you enjoyed the video and have a good day.